Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's session of Coffee and Counseling, where we don't spill the tea, but the coffee will be piping hot. We'll talk about all things counseling. We're your hosts, Rachel Steinhardt.
And Stephanie Van Schaick. And today we're going to talk all about survival mode and when surviving in life is more than enough and it's okay to not be thriving. So first and foremost, we hope everyone is doing great. However, if you're not, that's totally okay too. And this episode is definitely not going to be one to miss. Before we get on into that, Rachel, how have you been? How's your week going?
It's going good. It's been a little bit of an interesting week. We're potty training my 2-year-old. So, all of you parents out there understand the horrors of potty training. We've tried leaving diapers on, leaving diapers off, pull ups, underwear, and the girl just is not cooperating. So talk about being in survival mode. It's like survival mode with her right now in the house. Like, just praying to God. Like, you have cats littering everywhere. I have a child littering everywhere, or just deciding like the toilet's not for her. But when I put her to sleep, that's when she decides she needs to go potty. So I put her down for bedtime and I'm like, oh my gosh, I can breathe. The kids are down. And she's, Mommy, I have to go potty. I'm like, really? Why didn't you go potty the other 150 times I asked you today? That's been my household festivities the past week. I'll let you know how it go, guys. If you have tips and tricks, I did it with my 3-year-old, but it took a really long time. Anyone who wants to throw ideas at me, go for it. I welcome suggestions because this is not a fun process.
Doesn't sound fun at all. And Rachel, or for anyone watching, my life just got a little bit more complicated in the last like 30 seconds. So before we started recording, I didn't tell you, Rachel, one of my cats, the most destructive one yet, was staring at a clock that I had I haven't hung it up yet. So it's just sitting on like my filing cabinet right now. And no joke, for like 10 or 15 minutes, he was just watching the second hand move, 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 move. And I'm like, oh my gosh, she's gonna lunge at it and it's gonna go crazy. So anyway, right before we started recording, he had walked away and left. I'm like, oh, thank God. And then he just jumps up here right now. And if you saw, I try to move him, and he is attempting to pull out papers everywhere, and they just know, that you're recording. While I can't empathize fully with what you're going through, I can only imagine. Good luck with that. And hopefully we could get some of our listeners to give you some tips and tricks on Instagram at Coffee and Counseling Podcast. But .com. No, at Coffee and Counseling Podcast. My millennial is showing. All right. Everything is a www. All right, so let's talk about survival mode. We're going to dive into what it is, when you might be going through it, how to recognize that that's what you need and that's where you're at in life. I want to preface with talking about the pressure to always be working on yourself. We live in a culture that really talks and emphasizes that we should be thriving at any given point in our lives. And that, can be exhausting in and of itself and super unrealistic. And unfortunately, when we are constantly hearing messages like this all around us, and especially exasperated by social media, it could be a cause to really judge ourselves and be harsh on ourselves and not really understand that a lot of people, I would say every person, has gone through moments in life where survival is really what they should be focusing on. And that should be the only goal. That's the most appropriate goal at that point. And there's just seasons in life that is what the only goal to have. And that's totally okay. And we need to work on destigmatizing that and not judging so harshly others or ourselves when that is. And we need to really acknowledge that survival mode is a legitimate state. It's not a failure by any means. And it is just one of the times in life that we just need to focus on our basic needs and just getting through the day. And we're going to talk a lot more about this. But first, Rachel's going to give us a little bit more on why this matters to even recognize this and about survival mode.
Yeah. So, and Stephanie said we all have seasons of life and, different moments of our level of productivity, our ability to give of ourselves, our ability to be present, our ability to get certain tasks done and certain goals met, and understanding that when you are in this space, first of all, understanding what it looks like to be in this space, like
Mhm.
what events might cause you to be in this space, what your life might look like at that time, being able to identify that and then showing yourself some grace, because at the end of the day, you only have so much to give, and when you're in this space, you're you're not going to be able to give more than you have. So understanding that right now, this is what my cup looks like. This is what I'm pouring out of. And allowing yourself the time to just get through that day, just get through that week, just get through that time period, as long as that survival mode is going on, depending on whatever it is, and not drowned in the guilt and shame that tends to come with it. I know Stephanie and I, in the time that we worked together, and in the time that we worked separately, have dealt with this issue with clients so often, where there's so much self-hate on why am I not doing better, and why am I not accomplishing more, and what is wrong with me, and other people in this situation are able to do X, Y, and Z, which is another huge thing to understand, that survival mode, even in a very similar, even potentially identical to some degree situation, which, let's be real, there's no situations that are exactly identical, but even if surface level it looks like the same story, you're gonna process it differently, you're gonna deal with it differently. And I say this all the time, comparison is just the thief of happiness,
Mhm.
and the thief of being able to give yourself love and give yourself, like I said, that grace. Going through life, when this comes up, not kind of recognizing what's going on for you, it is really easy to start doubting yourself and questioning yourself and saying, why can't I just get my stuff together? Why can't I figure this out faster? Why did I spend the whole day today like lying in bed? Whatever it is that you're struggling with, whatever your survival mode looks like, understanding that that's part of the process, understanding that like you just getting X, Y, and Z done today, that was good. That was enough for you. And to kind of just bring this to light as well while we're having this topic, I think, a lot of the times therapists, when we're bringing up inspirational quotes or like reminders, or you're writing on your social media, for whoever needs to hear this, and we talk about things like, if all you did today was get out of bed, like that's okay. We're not sitting here telling people don't push yourself and don't go for the gold and don't run after your dreams, or like, oh, like don't trigger yourself into trying things that are hard. Not at all. Especially Steph and I don't operate that way.
Mhm.
But what we're saying is, for those of you who are in this mode, for those of you where you're in that survival space and getting out of bed this morning was a big deal, take it for what it is. It's a big deal, and give yourself that credit. If somebody just got into a severe accident and they haven't gotten out of bed in days, or they haven't walked, or they're relearning how to do that, taking a step a couple of months ago might not have been a big deal. But taking a step in that state is a humongous deal.
Yeah.
And so you have to look at yourself in survival mode and say, what are my like quote unquote big first steps in this space, in this recovery, in this time, in this whatever it is that's coming up for you, in that whatever that looks like, understanding that things that normally and ordinarily are just common sense or just easy, or things that you would just normally do, it's not going to look the same when you are in survival mode. And just really internalizing that for yourself.
Yeah, we're absolutely not saying to not challenge yourself. However, that's why when I say that it is a legitimate state, it's not a matter of laziness or anything like that. It is
Mhm.
truly what is needed, and this is why we're hoping that at the end of the session today, you're going to have a really good understanding as to how to identify whether or not you're in survival mode, and or if it's like you're every bone in your body is pushing to just be in this mode and not be pushing yourself further than that, and recognizing that and honoring that. So let's talk a little bit about what it means to be in survival mode and what are some indicators to help you know and recognize that you're in survival mode. So not one of these things in and of itself is going to say, oh yeah, I'm in survival mode, or I need to be just recognizing and honoring survival mode. But it's going to give you a good indication that if you're experiencing multiple things in this, it might be a sign that you are needing to honor that you are just in a survival mode at this point. So some things that you might be experiencing is a feeling of exhaustion, feeling mentally overwhelmed or emotionally drained. Those are some really big mental and emotional signs that you can recognize. And if that's something that you are experiencing, not just on a given day, because maybe you had a tough day, but if it's a pattern, that's an important thing to take note of. If you are having a sense of just getting through the day, or just telling yourself, just get through the day, just get through the day, or just get through the next 5 minutes, again, if it becomes a pattern, sometimes we have to this way in a stressful day or something like that. But if you are recognizing that daily you are having these thoughts, and maybe you're even having a hard time even just getting through the day, big sign that you might be needing to enter survival mode and honor that. Difficulty making decisions or planning for the future, or being able to even conceptualize what future goals you want to have or you want to work on, or even being able to go there, that's a sign as well. So, what we need to do when we are experiencing survival mode is, first and foremost, we need to prioritize our immediate needs over our long term goals. And our long term goals, that would be more in line with what we would call thriving, which we're going to actually have an entire session. The next session is going to be about thriving. So, make sure to tune back for that. But for now, when we're talking about surviving, we have to talk about prioritizing our immediate needs. So one of the best ways that I could reference this is something that I love to reference is Maslow's hierarchy of needs. It's one of my therapeutic tingles. I love talking about this. And especially when it comes to survival. When my client and I identify that you are in survival mode and now we have to figure out how to get through this, first and foremost, we do have to have some grace with ourselves, and that's going to be a big part of working on it. But we need to first look at your physiological needs, your physical needs. And that's so Maslow's hierarchy of needs, I probably should preface with what that is. It is a hierarchy that basically indicates that it's shaped like a triangle. It's really helpful to see the visual. But the bottom is what you need to be able to have in order to achieve the next step in the pyramid. So hopefully it gives a little bit of a basis as to how that might look. So the bottom of the pyramid is the physiological needs, and we are talking about biological requirements for human survival. Of course, we think about breathing, eating, water. So that's what I would say is you need to achieve that. You need to be working and focusing on that. And if that's the sole thing that you can do, then that is totally okay. So when we're talking about food, we need to have nourishing food. We need to be able to make sure we're eating regularly. We need to make sure we're drinking our water and not risking dehydration, because sometimes even that could be really difficult. We are just trying to survive and we can neglect our basic needs. Of course, shelter is really important. We need warmth. We need to be able to have a safe shelter. We need clothing. Those are some basic things we need. Sleep is also a part in this. And I know that's really hard, especially if you're in survival mode for different reasons. It might be very difficult to get proper sleep, but I would encourage you to the best of your ability to really try to prioritize that. And it's probably going to be imperfect, and that's okay, but keep trying and working on that. So making sure to the best of your ability that you're getting enough sleep and getting regular sleep. And I would also put medications in here. So if you are taking any medications, it's really important to not neglect that for your physical or your mental health. You need to make sure that you're regularly taking those. And then right above that, and I would say it's closely related, is safety needs. So it's not necessarily only about physical safety, which I would also kind of put in the physiological needs. We need to have shelter and protection. But the safety that Maslow refers to is about wanting some control in your life and predictability. And that's something we all want. We want order, predictability, control. So some things here would be emotional security and financial security, which of course are incredibly important. So it's hard, but if you are one of the people in your family that's working, once you have your physiological needs met, you also need to probably get up and do the best that you can to make sure you're working and earning that paycheck so that you can also continue to fill those other requirements, and pay your bills and have that house over your head. Emotional security is however you are able to give yourself grace in this and regulate your emotions to the best of your ability. It's not going to be perfect. So those are some of the things that we need to focus on with that and overall health. The next one, which is also would be the nice transition when we do talk about thriving, kind of falls in both categories. It's love and belongingness. And the reason why I put this in surviving as well, it's because it's so important to have other humans in your life that are able to be there for you when you're in survival mode. Because if you are in healthy relationships, it's important for them to be able to help you maybe pick up the slack where you are struggling in this very moment in time. What's healthy in a relationship, romantic or otherwise, is that if that person was going through survival mode and you weren't, that you would step up and help them in that. So looking around for the people that you can depend on that are going to be there for you and help you meet your physiological and safety needs. Taking care of those relationships, again, it's not going to be as prioritized as your food or your sleep, but it is really pretty important. With that being said, I know that Rachel wants to talk a little bit about some of the reasons that, not all inclusive, but some of the reasons that you might enter or be triggered into a survival mode.
Yes, and I love how you just created that picture of the pyramid. I felt like I was back in grad school looking at that thing. But it actually really made me realize something that I really want, especially our eating disorder clients, to hear.
Mhm.
You know, one of the first things that Steph said was the need for eating and not being able to function without food. And so, for those of you who are struggling with an eating disorder or maintaining, nutritional well being, that is why you are in survival mode all the time. That is why it is so difficult to do basic things, because you're literally not getting the foundation of that pyramid met. The thing that is like the most basic need, you're not doing, or you're struggling with, or, is lacking for you. And so at the end of the day, especially for those of you who are struggling with a disorder where the basic need piece, especially, this is true also for anyone in NA or AA, where like your physical safety or your physical well-being is in question. Potentially somebody who, like you said, and this goes hand in hand with medication, if somebody is struggling with borderline personality disorder or bipolar disorder 1 or 2, where they're, the characteristics and traits can put their bodies in danger at the end of the day if they are not medicated properly, whether it's through self-harm or, if they're having a manic episode and doing something dangerous or whatever it is. At the end of the day, that goes right back to like needing to meet that basic need. So just understanding that, if first of all, you do not have to have a disorder to be in survival mode. I kind of just want to put that out there. But for those of you who are struggling with a mental health or physical disorder, illness, whatever it is, where that survival mode can last a really long time, cut yourself some slack, because you're literally not meeting your basic need. And that's really hard. And that's also why we're saying that, like, before anything else, that needs to be taken care of. I really remember this whole conversation just brings me back to one of the first cases I ever worked with in grad school. I don't know what it was like for you, Steph, but one of our first internships, for some of us, we were thrown in the craziest situations. So, like, leaving as much detail out as humanly possible, I had to go to a very, 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 like, underprivileged um, area with people who were truly suffering in every way possible: mental health, physical health, finances, whatever. And I was met with a case where the person was homeless. They had no paperwork. they had mental illness, they had physical illness, and the guy's sitting in front of me, and I'm like, where do you even start with a person like that? Like they're just giving me every problem under the sun, and I'm like, can I give you a hug? Like it was really overwhelming and like emotional. And I remember thinking just like, as a new therapist, and even now, sometimes we feel this way. We're just like, I just want to help you, like all of you right now. Like, I just want to fix all of you right now, and I just want to make it better. And I remember this is the really where the hierarchy of needs came into play, because my professor was like, Rachel, right now, there is no mental health. There's no nothing. Where is he sleeping tonight?
Mhm.
And that was the first time it really clicked for me where this comes into play in therapy, because there are points in therapy where you're not really doing therapy. You're making sure the person's getting their basic needs met.
Yeah.
And like to treat somebody like that for a mental health issue when they don't even know where they're sleeping tonight would have been inappropriate. And so for those of you who are in survival mode, if you're feeling like your support system or your mental health or physical health provider is not recognizing you and meeting you where you're at, just putting this out there, that's a red flag and that's an issue.
Mhm.
And Steph, I don't know like if that's come up for you in your practice or like where you've seen that, but
Mhm.
that client for me at that time really was such a just basic example of what we're talking about, to a more extreme case,
Yeah.
obviously. But I wonder like if you have an example of a client, where it's like, yeah, like this would be an example of we just need to get you through today.
Mhm. Yeah, yeah. So I have to admit, I was never thrown in a situation that dire, and I'm quite grateful for that. um, but I do know, and I think that a lot of times when it comes to probably a lot of people that we're listening to, it's not going to be in that extreme version. But I think it was such a great example that you had given to really illustrate that we need to start from the bottom. And that's why when I talk to my clients about, where are we at? I do reference specifically Maslow's hierarchy of needs and
Mhm.
suggest even printing it out for themselves, because especially if they are going through something that does trigger them to be in survival mode, or if they have a disorder that might really make it a little bit easier to slip into that. It's hard to, in the middle of survival mode, to recognize what you need to survive. So the Maslow's hierarchy of needs is put out there. You don't have to be thinking. You don't have to do all that extra steps. All you need to do is look, identify, and check it off.
I think that, to go back to your point, in terms of let's understand what this might look like and where this might come up when you might find yourself in survival mode.
Mhm.
I want to mention that I know it sounds like we're describing a situation when someone is like in a severe depression or like severe anxiety. And don't get me wrong, that is the case a lot of the time. It can very much look like depression, it can very much look like severe anxiety. And that can also be a humongous part of it, which is why you're having some of those same physical and mental symptoms as anxiety and depression. And somebody who's in survival mode may very well be depressed and anxious. That being said, you can be in survival mode for both negative things and positive things. So, like Steph just said, me being a mom is out there, postpartum, you are in full fledged survival mode. Like, if you slept, if you ate, if you showered, mid, I mean, listen, some people have more help than others.
Mhm.
And kudos to you. We love that for you. Take it, queen. But at the end of the day, a lot of us don't. Not everyone has a night nurse. Not everyone has, somebody coming in and helping, a family member, a friend. Some people are doing it on their own. Some people's partners, depending on their setup, are involved less than others. And at the end of the day, that space can really just look like I need to get through the next hour. I need to get through the next day. I need to get through the next
Yeah.
week, especially in the first 6 weeks. And it could be into a year. But especially in the first 6 weeks, you are recovering physically, dealing with mentally, your hormones going berserko, lack of sleep, lack of being able to practice self care. And at that point, you're just like, I need to get in as much sleep as humanly possible so I don't go insane.
Mhm.
I need to eat something, I need to drink something. That's it. Like that's really it, you know? And I'm definitely we're going to be doing mommy talk and postpartum talk in separate sessions, so don't worry about that. But is a very happy occasion. Like you just had a baby, that's great. Hopefully, in most cases, hopefully that's a good. But, you know, even in the happiest occasion in the world, even this is if this is someone's rainbow baby, if this is a baby they've been waiting for 15 years, it doesn't matter. That time is really overwhelming, and you can definitely find yourself in survival mode for a hot minute. If you um are having a really big move, your entire life is in boxes. You are like, maybe there's a time difference, you're exhausted from traveling. I remember when I did the move from New York to Florida, my husband and we were sick for a month. We were so sleep deprived. We were setting ourselves up here. I was pregnant. I had a baby, which didn't help. I mean, obviously it's amazing, but like it was a lot in one shot. We were like, we didn't have like our stuff set up yet. We were sleeping on like a mattress on the floor and like eating off of like cardboard boxes. And at that point, like, yes, that's so exciting. I've been wanting to move to Florida for as long as I could remember, but it was really overwhelming. We were nonstop going to like, okay, let's set ourselves up at the bank and let's set up our kid for daycare and let's set up our jobs and where's it going to get done and let's furnish our house. It was so much that at the end of every day we had to be like, did we eat? Did we sleep? Like how are those things being done today? Because our house wasn't set up for that. And that might sound dramatic, but it was a level of survival mode. We had to be like literally, I think we actually didn't even sleep in the house for the first few days or weeks. Our family was gracious enough to let us crash by them for a little, but that was kind of the thought process. It was like, what's our basic needs and how are we getting them met? Like, where are we eating tonight? We don't have a working kitchen right now. We don't have any of our utensils out. Like, are we eating out? Are we eating by a friend? And so, you know, that again is a happy occasion. If you're Sometimes planning a wedding can feel like you're on survival mode. That's also really crazy. It's really overwhelming. There's a lot on your mind. You can forget to take care of certain basic things because you're so overwhelmed with details and planning and wanting everything to be perfect and getting everything right. Your brain is like racing in a million places. That can also feel like you're just like, oh my God, sit down for a minute.
Mhm.
And so you can have beautiful things come in your life and feel like you're in survival mode. That being said, what I think a lot of you are probably also going to relate to is being in survival mode for things that are maybe a drop more obvious, like experiencing loss, going through grief. That could be an emotional loss, a physical loss. It could be a death. It could be, a broken relationship. It could be a broken friendship, going through, we talked about this, a chronic illness or a health issue, yourself or somebody that you love, losing a job or having a hard time finding a job or being unhappy in your job, figuring out what to do with your job, not really having a sense of direction or purpose. Sometimes I find that young adults straight out of either high school straight out of college find themselves a lot of the time in survival mode.
Mhm.
And Steph, I don't know if you've ever seen this, but it's like it's the first time that they don't have every moment planned out for them by someone other than themselves, and no one is like knocking on their door making sure that these things are taken care of.
Mhm.
So all of a sudden they're like, I mean, obviously not everyone experiences this, but for some of them it's like, oh, well, I don't actually have to wake up at 7 or 8, depending on what your schedule is like. Do I still wake up at that time? Do I get myself a job? Did I go grocery shopping? Did I set up a place for me to live? Like I've done sessions with clients in dorms being like, when's the last time you showered?
Mhm.
Like, where's your laundry? What have you eaten in the past week?
Mhm.
Because these are new things and it can feel very overwhelming. They could feel really lost if they don't have a very specific direction of what they want to do when school's over. Just kind of being like, what do I do with myself? And so physically, they don't know what to do with themselves. And mentally, just having that feeling of a lack of direction, a lack of purpose, needing that clarity can make you really feel like you're in survival mode. And maybe that goes a little hand in hand, closer to what depression might feel like. But that is what survival mode might look like. And that is a situation where it might arise. But again, that's kind of a happy occasion too, because you just graduated. Like, that's great. You have your whole life ahead of you. Yet here you are, and you're like, what do I do with myself?
And I think it's really important that you had brought up that it's not only um, things that are negative. It can very much be those exciting moments. And that you brought up moving while you were talking. I was literally thinking about my
Your
move
move.
before you started bringing it up. And I remember, I mean, not only, of course, it was a cross country move as well, coming from New York to Florida. So, in and of itself, it's kind of a shock trying to be as I don't think we really think about it. Everything is new. I
Yeah.
have been
And
in
we
an
both
area.
drove, right? You drove
I
also.
drove straight through with a cat that was crying the entire way, and I mean, it was really a rough. Yeah, it was rough for that, and it was obviously very exciting. And I only been to the area I think twice before I actually moved. So just coming here, but even separate of the entire place being different and figuring out where do you do your grocery shopping, where do you drive, like how do you drive to the place that you're trying to get to, what's the most cohesive way, where do I get gas, like all those things. But I remember, and I could not understand for the longest time why I was feeling so exhausted. And, but also I was having a really hard time sleeping when I first got here for a while. And I realized that all those little things that did not require me having any conscious level of it,
Mhm.
I needed to now think about. So the littlest thing, that the best example I could give is that where I lived prior, the bathroom was not next to my room, like next to my bedroom. It was, I had to go through the house and I passed through the kitchen first. So I always would put my coffee, I wake up, put my coffee on first so that it has time to cool down and go into the bathroom, do my brushing my teeth and all that stuff. And the simple thing that's what I would do. That's just what I did without thinking. And then when I moved here, I'm like, it doesn't make sense to go all the way to the kitchen to put my coffee on first. Like the first thing I would do is go to the bathroom. And it's like that simple swap that it's like you have to think about it now. That can
Mhm.
be truly exhausting. And a lot of times we are meant to automate. Our brains are computers that want to automate. And that's why we go through things and don't think about it. But when we have to start thinking about certain things, we only have so much capacity to be able to do that before it gets truly tiring. So that was one little piece of the puzzle, but for the longest time, it was a lot about, okay, I have to put all the goals that I have, all the decorating I want to do, all of these things to
Mhm.
rest for now, because right now I need to figure out my new routine, my new life here, where I go to the grocery store, all of that. And yes, I would still say that's a step above just merely survival mode. However, if that's where I was, that's absolutely okay. And so I think it's really important for people to hear that
Mhm.
positive and negative things might be
Yeah.
bringing you to that.
And you can
Hmm.
also be on survival mode and not be at the complete bottom level.
Yeah.
Like most things in mental health, it is a certain version of a spectrum. And I think when I think this will make so much more sense when everyone hears this episode with the thriving episode and
Mhm.
understanding the difference. But it's like, for example, like when you're in this mode, you're not thinking like, okay, I really want to go out and have coffee with my girlfriends. Like, that is the last thing on your mind. It's the last thing on your mind to be like, I want to go to TJ Maxx and spend an hour sniffing scented candles. Like, self care, like being
Yeah.
social, hanging out, having a good time, just like doing things that like makes you human and makes you have a life and makes you feel like you, the things that make you excited and make you hopeful and make you joyous and give you purpose, all those things. I think a lot of those things kind of get put on the back burner. And that's when you find yourself very much in this space.
Mm.
And obviously, an example, excuse me, that I didn't give is, experiencing any type of little T or big T trauma. When
Mhm.
you're just like, holy crap, what did I just survive? Um, that's a big piece of it as well, where either you're living in a trauma or just went through a trauma or experiencing vicarious trauma. That can have a humongous impact on your life. Even if it's not physically, mentally, it's a lot, to just like be very open and honest about something that my whole world has kind of experienced since October 7th, like knowing that that is going on in our world. um, I had family serving, I had family that lived there, people who you're like calling on a daily basis, are you still alive? Knowing that your people and your nation and your home is under constant attack or in the middle of a war, even if I'm not physically the one that's there, that's going to impact how you interact with your day, how you interact with the world around you. Like things that you normally want to do normally matter, like don't. I remember in the first couple of like weeks, months that happened in our community, it's like a huge thing to go out, to eat, to celebrate. We're just like part of our culture. No one wanted to go anywhere and no one wanted to do anything. And like the restaurants were dead. And I remember in Israel, they were kind of telling us like, keep living, because if you're not living, like that's just makes the opposing side win. Like that's what they want. They want you to stop living and
Mm.
stop being happy. I know that like for us as a community, that was a very hard thing to experience because we were like all vicariously going through a trauma. And to a degree, talking to, fellow Jewish clients or talking to Zionistic clients, also even like Christian and Catholic clients who, Israel is important to them. A lot of
Absolutely.
them were like having a really hard time or were just so appalled at what was happening that they they were having a hard time functioning. My clients who are on campuses who are like, I don't want to go out. I'm scared to show my identity. I'm scared to step foot on my campus. Like, things like that can also put you in survival mode, even if you have your basic needs met. An intense example and a really personal one, but you can have your basic needs met and very much still be in survival mode.
Yeah, that's a really great point. And, with everything that you're saying, and I think it was such an important distinction that you had put out there that, helped me also to recognize that, in a way, I kind of invalidated my own experience of the survival because it is, when I moved,
Yeah.
and I could see my clients doing this as well. And something that I would say to my client is that just like what you were saying, is that it's a spectrum. So sure, survival can be not being able to get out of bed in the morning, but survival can be just simply trying to get your basic needs met. But also, even if you have the basic needs met, like you're saying, having the time where there's just something that's going on that you can't get past and you can't really be in that thriving, and perhaps it's somewhere in the middle, but I would say there's a surviving, thriving spectrum. It's not just one or the other,
Right.
or all or nothing. So something that we see a lot is that people who are in that survival mode, once we're able to identify it, become aware of it, feel guilt for having that, or maybe even before they're recognizing that this is what they're going through. And I wanted to quickly kind of go through why that might be. One of which is social media and the pressure in our society, though, too, to always be improving, growing, succeeding, getting the next goal, hustle culture, all of that is so damaging because it's not human to always be in a mode where we are achieving and growing and getting to the next goal. It's just not something that's possible for anyone, really. Maybe at the top of the top, for, I don't know, like the Elon Musk of the world, who's like a very, very small percentage of this world. Beyond that, most of us are, we have other things that we need to be focusing on. And sometimes we don't have the help that maybe other people do to be able to, kind of get all their needs met. But even so, with, like we said, with the basic needs being met, we can still just be in that survival mode. But we need to be able to give ourselves grace that you're not always going to be in that thriving mode. There's also the self-help industry, which is still very strong. It has an obsession with productivity, and it's kind of like, I don't think this is really a thing anymore, but when those like morning routines, like the perfect morning routines, were like really I guess you could say viral on YouTube. Like that was the thing that people were doing, my productive morning routine, my productive nighttime routine. And basically it would take a full 24 hours to do any one of these routines. Like you don't have a job. Like there's no way you could be doing this and have anything else going on. So we then are comparing ourselves to these really crazy and unrealistic standards. Even now that we know that that's just not real, it's still really hard to fully grasp that because we're seeing something and being told it's real. And it's
Mhm.
hard to reconcile that within us that no, this isn't real and it's okay that this is where I am. And also, a big reason for the guilt is comparison, and kind of wrapped up all in one. Not only comparison via social media, which makes it ever so easier to do that, but comparing to other people in your life, and maybe you perceive that someone's handling it better, that like the same type of event than you. And what's really important to know is that there's not a right way. You don't know what another person's going through. So let's just say that both you and someone that you know, a coworker perhaps, both of you had lost someone very close in your life, and it feels like your world is crumbling down. It takes everything you can to just get out of bed, and they go to work every day. They're like making everything look perfectly easy. They're seemingly doing great. You have absolutely no idea. One, maybe that person goes home and cries hysterically for the rest of the night. You don't know if maybe they're completely pretending that none of this is existing and they're in complete denial. You don't know how this might be the way that they're handling it. And maybe that is the proper way for them to handle it, but that doesn't mean they're doing it better or right.
Yeah.
It
We
just
also
means
don't know what that person's like relationship with the person who passed was. Like for all you know, they didn't have a good relationship and it's so not the same thing.
totally. We can't compare based on things that, and we might think we know, because I hear this a lot that some clients might say, well, I know that person. It's like, yes, but even so, we all do to some extent try to put out the best of us. And even if you are very close to a friend, maybe you're not giving them everything. And it doesn't mean you're being maniacal about it. It just means that it's hard and it's sometimes really difficult to be vulnerable. So really, with all this being said, when we're talking about the guilt, it's really important then to learn more about how to challenge the inner critic, which kind of leads to which is critical of the guilt, or critical of the survival mode leading to the guilt, rather.
Yeah. So, I think we did touch on this a little bit. And so, we're not going to repeat ourselves here, but just understanding this concept of like, negative self-talk, and we'll have future episodes on, self-esteem and self-worth, but making sure that when you are aware that you are in survival mode, when you're catching yourself feeling some of the things that Steph and I are talking about, when you're finding yourself in one of the situations you may have mentioned, to not allow that part of you that's your own worst critic and your own worst enemy, and that negative voice in your head that makes you feel horrific about yourself, to
Mhm.
take over your mind. Really like thinking to yourself in your head, if this were my best friend right now going through this, would I say to them what I'm saying to myself? Would I
Mhm.
expect from them what I'm expecting from myself? Or would I find compassion, and would I find kindness, and would I find patience for what they're going through that for some reason I'm having a hard time giving myself? Um, because we do, we want the best version of ourselves, and we also want to, if not outdo the person next to us, at least feel like we're as good as them. And so when we are playing the comparison game, and seemingly the person next to us, or the person on the post that's updating us on there every 25 seconds of their life supposedly, or like, you know it was so funny. I was talking to Stephanie about this, like people writing on their stories about like what their schedule looks like that day,
Mhm.
and saying like, okay, I have 3 meetings and 4 sessions and then this and that. And like, there's nothing wrong with that. Like, go for it. If you want to
Mhm.
share that, and like, it helps you stay motivated, it helps other people motivate you, it keeps you accountable. It's all good. But keep
Mhm.
in mind, somebody can write an entire schedule that's completely full, like not real.
Mhm.
You
Totally.
wouldn't know. You wouldn't know. You know what I'm saying? Or like, can write a schedule that sounds so much more intense than it actually is. Or like, write a schedule that like maybe that day is like the one day of their entire week that they have stuff going on and the rest of their day is chill. Or
Mm-hmm.
it's exactly what it sounds like and they have a really crazy busy life and that's what their season of life looks like right now and yours might not and that's okay too.
Mm-hmm.
We all have a different story and we're all on our own path in our own journey and like keep your eyes on your own lane.
Yeah, and with that being said, and then we'll get into a little bit more about ways that you can, work on this and how to support yourself in survival mode. But that schedule example, like you had brought up, like you're totally right on all accounts. But also, it's interesting because one of the things that we need to challenge is this idea and notion that that's inherently better. I mean, it's just what is, and sometimes a busy schedule might be nice for someone occasionally, but some person, or depending on their life or whatnot, that it might be a lot more lax, and that's good for them.
Mhm.
So we have to challenge what we just decide is better, or not. Not everything is as clear as it is. And also quickly before we get into that, I think it's something that would be really great for our listeners to contribute, because one of the things that Rachel and I were talking about is how long we want to make these podcasts. And as I'm realizing that as we talk, there's a lot that we have to say, and we want to hear from you. What is your ideal length of a podcast? Do you like hearing and getting into details like we do? Do you prefer longer? Do you prefer shorter? And then maybe we can accommodate accordingly to see what they're actually looking for. So if you're also good with that, Rachel, do you want to go into some of the supporting yourself in survival mode?
Yes. So when we find ourselves in this space, and Steph kind of said it, when you are looking at the hierarchy of needs and you're staring at that pyramid, that's going to kind of give you your cheat sheet of how you deal with this. But you're really it's as simple as not doing it is not simple. I think understanding what it is more simple than it may sound. It's just making sure you're getting your basic needs met. Do I have somewhere to sleep tonight? Have I eaten? You know, did I drink something? Am I taking my medications? Am I physically safe? Great. Next, like, what have I done for hygiene today? Like, have I showered? Have I changed my clothes? Have I brushed my teeth? Um, and working your way up that pyramid as far as you can go. When you're finding yourself hitting a ceiling in the pyramid, that's okay. That's the whole point of this entire podcast. It's
Mhm.
go as high as you can go. Basic needs have to be met. If you're not meeting them alone, try to ask for help if it's available. We understand not everybody has a support system. We
Mhm.
understand that everyone has the luxury and the privilege to get help. And I don't even mean like paid help. I mean, even friends or family, not everyone has that. And I understand that. Like, I'm not here assuming that you do. But if you do, and asking for help is hard for you, this would probably be a great time to practice and exercise asking for help, picking up the phone. And that could even be asking for emotional help and emotional support of, hey, can you just hear me out? Can you just sit with me? Can you literally just hold my hand while I cry? Can you give me a hug? Um, let people be there for you, you know
Mhm.
understanding, and this might get more detailed depending on like what your situation is, but like I know in my community a saving grace when someone is going through something like the best of the best or the worst of the worst, like I got this when I had a child and I got this when I lost a parent, and we provide meal trains for people. And
Mhm.
it's just literally what this whole session is, which is we're helping each other meet basic needs, because the last thing on your mind is what am I going to cook, or how much am I going to cook, or what should I, if you're a parent, like what am I going to make for my kids, helping you meet that basic need. So if you're able to rely on your community, if you have the means to order takeout, even if takeout's not fancy, just order something to get something in your system. If your dinner that night is cereal and milk, awesome. That's survival
Mhm.
mode. That's okay.
Mhm.
That's
Yeah.
okay.
Mhm. Yeah, and with that, of course, I think it's a little bit. It's something if you are struggling with an eating disorder. Again, I know we touched upon that earlier in the session. It is something that I hope that you are getting therapy for as well, so that that can be your survival mode. Might need to look a little different because your basic survival might just
Mhm.
be in really getting that nourishment. So regardless, and maybe we could post more when this goes live. We could post more on our Instagram about some other ways that you can be supporting yourself in survival mode. So make sure to be checking our Instagram out. Subscribe over there. Follow over there. Again, my millennial is showing. It's a follow, not a subscribe, right? Over on Instagram.
Um,
um, I think so, but um, and so I just want to kind of tie everything together and talking about recognizing when you're ready to move beyond survival mode. So, of course, there's no need to rush the process, but it is important. And I hope that you are seeking out therapy or have someone trusted around you who can help you to recognize when, okay, more help is needed and we really have to figure this out because it could be problematic if it continues for a certain amount of time. I'm not going to give a time limit for that because it really depends on a lot of other circumstances. But hopefully, you have someone in your life or you have therapy, a good therapist who could help you with that. But some signs that you might be feeling ready for the next phase and working toward going into the thriving area is, having some small sparks of motivation again, or having more emotional bandwidth for things that are beyond the basics. Maybe you're finding that you're interested again in different things that you didn't really feel like you had the energy to care about before. Maybe you want to set some smaller goals or make more long-term plans. So next week, as I said, we're going to be talking about thriving, what that can look like, and how to step into it when you're ready without pressure. So it's okay to be in survival mode. It's not a failure. It's a response to what's happening in your life. And we really just need to be compassionate with ourselves and patient. So before we close, we just want to take a couple minutes to quickly answer our listener question. So make sure if you are not following us on Instagram to follow us at Coffee and Counseling Podcast. And we are going to take time at the end of each session to answer our listener question. So you could send those you could send them via DMs over there or leave it in our comment session. And today's listener's question is, what's your take on social media and mental health? I follow a lot of therapy accounts, and sometimes it's helpful, but other times it just makes me overanalyze everything I do. How do I find a balance? Now I know this is a much bigger topic. So any quick tips, Rachel?
I think
Or
we did discuss this a little bit in terms of like catching yourself and comparing and um, reminding yourself of the reality of what's behind the screen. But I also think you have to be able to turn it off when it's not servicing you, like, especially in the eating disorder world, we talk a lot about like keeping yourself away from accounts that are going to not help you on your wellness journey. And I think that that's true for anything. Like if something is not servicing you, if it's not making you feel better, if it's not adding to your day, if it's not making you happier or inspiring you, like get rid of it, block it, don't follow it. And even if that means completely removing yourself from social media for a little bit, go for it. It definitely can't hurt. Listen, there's a lot of beautiful things about social media, and there's a lot of beautiful things about the internet, and this is a whole other conversation. But we all know I'm not like saying anything new, how harmful it can also be, how difficult it could be to navigate, and like know your limits. When you're seeing things come up for you that are not helping you, that are not servicing you, take a step back. That's okay.
Yeah, yeah, and just to add a couple more things and this really can be a bunch of other sessions that we could be talking about this, but absolutely, social media detoxes. I am a big advocate for taking some time away, even if it is just a few hours. If you're on it constantly, hopefully you could do it a little bit longer. Being an educated consumer of social media, I think is really important as well. Knowing what you're looking at, knowing and or questioning the authority that might be behind it. And specifically when you're talking about following a lot of therapy accounts, too much of a good thing is not always a good thing. And I would say too much of anything leads to not good places. And there could be a lot of conflicting information on therapy accounts. Not everyone, to be really honest, who are having therapy accounts are actually therapists. So be mindful of who it is that you're looking at. But maybe it's just time to mute some of those people, because I do find that sometimes with therapy accounts, it can, what's the best way to put it? It can make everything a mental illness, a mental disorder. If it's like, oh, well, someone stopped short ahead of you and you had an anxiety spike, that doesn't mean you have generalized anxiety disorder. They have a lot of symptoms out there, and it could start making people diagnose themselves left and right and worrying about certain things. And then also a lot of times, in the dangerous part is diagnosing themselves and moving into that diagnosis. And it becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy in a lot of ways. But it is certainly something worthwhile to talk more about in future sessions. So did you want to just wrap it up, Rachel?
Yeah. So I did just want to add to this conversation, and we'll end with this, that for some of you, depending on what you're struggling with, survival mode might be putting yourself in a facility, putting yourself in a residential center, in a hospital for a physical or a mental illness. And if that's what your survival mode looks like, please do that. Call the suicidal hotline, call 911, ask a friend or family member to help you get to that higher level of care. If that's what your survival mode looks like, that's okay. And you surviving it means you taking that step. So please, if that's where you're at, take that step. And I'll just leave it with that. But if you guys have any questions or further comments or tidbits that you want to add to this session, please go ahead and do so. Reach out to us either via email or via our Instagram account. And we are so happy to get back to you and to answer any questions that you guys might have.
Mm-hmm. Yes, and we'll link all of that information down in the bio, down in the show notes, actually. And if any of you are open to answering this question, send us your answers. Have you ever felt guilty for just surviving? What helps you in those moments? Let us know, and we'd be happy to review them. And if you like, even share them to help other people.
Thank you so much for being with us today. Please follow our Instagram at Coffee and Counseling Podcast and send any questions you have about any topic to us via direct message for a chance for your question to be featured in one of our next sessions. You can also email us your questions or topic suggestions at coffeeandcounselingpodcast@gmail.com. Make sure to check out some of our other sessions available to you right now. Once you drink up all of those and your coffee, come back next Tuesday for our next session.
The information shared in this podcast is for educational and informational purposes only and does not constitute therapy or mental health advice. Listening to this podcast does not establish a therapeutic relationship between you and the hosts. If you are in need of support, we encourage you to seek help from a qualified mental health professional. This podcast is not a substitute for individualized care. We do offer individualized therapy. If you're interested in individual therapy with one of us, please visit our practice websites and send us an email to set up a free consultation call. All of the links and our contact info will be in the show notes.